In this video, I'm going to show you how you can plug the Gigcaster into your computer, show you the software that it comes with, and have a look at the SD card that's been recorded, and show you what we can do with that. The Gigcaster is being plugged directly into the computer with the USB-C cable right here. You'll notice I'm not using the power cable. I don't need to. When you plug it into a computer that can run USB-C, it'll actually power the Gigcaster. We have my microphone going into channel 1, as you can see here. And if I click on channel 1, you can see I've got 48 volts pumping in through the back here, no problem. Again, not using the power adapter, it's just being powered by the computer. We're actually recording this on OBS right now, which just goes to show how versatile this is, because I could use this for live streaming straight away. I still have access to all the effects. So for example, if I was to turn this effect on, technically this is a guitar effect, but I can turn all the effects on if I wanted to. Or what we can do is press this little guitar here and we can change the effect from guitar to sing, to talk, to console. So let's just go over to talk. And we've got a couple of different ones. Let's use Bright Enhance. So this is Bright Enhance. This is a speaking effect. We can go over to all the different ones here. And I've got the effects button switched on so I can skip through each one. No problem at all. Let's put it on calm speech. All the functionality and all the effects are available to me right here and to pump into my computer. For example, we have all the different pads are available to play their sound. Now, the other thing about the pads is that's actually bank 1. There's multiple banks of sounds, and you can load absolutely loads up. So I know my microphone's on input number 1, but I could plug my guitar into input number 1 right here, and then have my microphone on 2, for example, and then we could be live streaming as we are using OBS right now, and we could be playing with all the effects in 48 volt phantom power, or maybe you've got a sound when people subscribe to you, or they send you a tip, or they send you a request. You could use these pads a little bit like a DJ, and then you've got those sounds just to elevate your live stream performance. Additional to all of that, we can still record. We can hit record at the top here, and then it's recording to the SD card that's in the back. So to access these pads and showcase what they do, if we go to the menu, and then there's pad right in the middle here, and you can see all the different pads there. There's actually different banks. So if we go through, there's a total of 8 banks of pads. The 8th one isn't even being used. That's why it's grayed out. And if we move this across, I could change the color of each one. And for example here, this one says it's a zap. There it is. And if we go across to a different one, that's a boing. And then the other thing as well is you've got effects. So if you go into effects, you can change what these 8 buttons do. So if I tap effects on here, at the moment what this says is this is channel 1 patch increase and decrease, channel 2 patch decrease and increase, channel 3, and these 2 are MIDI CC numbers. This gets really interesting because what you can do is you can use that for a couple of different things. Mainly, if you're live streaming, you could use it to switch a camera. So you could send a MIDI CC, and as long as the software that you're using accepts that, you could press that button and maybe it changes a camera, changes a different look, or changes a different view. You could press that button and maybe it changes a scene to say, I'll be right back. That way, if you're nowhere near a camera and you're live streaming, your computer's here and you're over there, then you could control it right here. And that's just 2 of them. And again, there are multiple banks. USB channel level, Bluetooth turn on or off, USB effect turn on and off. So you can actually go through the different banks and change different things. This comes really into its own when you're doing things like live streaming, because you don't have 8, you've got 8 banks of 8. So there's a total of 64 buttons that you could technically press whilst on a live stream or gigging. Of course, if we press this button, we're now back to the sounds, and that's coming out of this channel. If we go to this channel, we can actually say if we want any kind of sound effects. There are effects you can add onto this. So we've got things like a delay, we've got pan, freeze, granular, you've got phaser, slicer, tremolo, ring mod. There's loads of different effects that you can apply to the sound pad. The alternative, of course, is when you're live streaming is you've got this foot switch, and we showed that in the previous video. So with the foot switch system, again, you can program them up. So let's go to pedal 1. We can say what it does. So at the moment, it just says channel 1, functions off, toggle moment and mode, and what we're going to do with it. And we've got 4 different functions. So we can actually have different functions for 1 button press, which is really clever. You've also got the option for 2 expression pedals. So maybe we want to actually add an expression pedal in. What's it going to do? It's going to actually do expression, or it's going to do volume of a specific channel, or it's going to do EQ. It's totally up to you. It's really clever. When we get into using the Gigcaster for live streaming and for using with your computer, all the functionality that you have live, you have here. So there's nothing being taken away. But the absolute pain is things like bringing in a phone call on a live stream or trying to get some background music. It sounds pretty simple, but actually it's a real complicated situation if you've just got a normal analog mixer or a very basic digital mixer. You have USB, you have phone, and you also have Bluetooth as well. So the phone port is actually the aux port down here. And the great thing is you can go into it and we can actually turn on things like delays or effects. We can have a couple of different basic sounds, so we can obviously change the EQ. And for the input itself, you can change it. So we could actually be from here, or it could be the internal microphone, or it could be a headset that you're wearing that's connected to both a phone and this port here. What's really nice is you've got a couple of mobile phone specific options, things like ducking, things like mix minus. You've got TRRS return. That's on by default, so therefore the person who's calling in can hear you. So that's the Gigcaster for live streaming. But what about using this in your digital audio workstation? This is one new track that we're doing for Tokyo Wasteland. And the audio you're hearing right now is the Gigcaster. I'm actually just bringing it in on the recording. But if we go into here, we can actually scroll down. You can see that the Gigcaster is coming in straight away. And we go to Logic Pro, go to Settings, go to Audio, and there it is, Gigcaster 8. You can have the input device or you can have it as an output device. It's core audio enabled, which is fantastic. And you can pump this out to the Gigcaster, so then you could hear it on headphones here. And as this is playing, it's actually coming in on the Gigcaster. So if we use the USB and bring this up, there it is. You can actually see it there. Now it's going to cause a bit of a delay, so I'm going to stop that recording. But it works, and it works incredibly well. When we go over to the channel strips, we can have a look at here. We go to input, and you can only see 2 inputs. And that's because the Gigcaster is set up as a stereo. So if we go into here, if we go into the menu, and then we go into setup, and we go into USB, audio mode is 2 mix. So what we can do is we can actually change this over to multi-stream. Now it's asking us to disconnect and apply the audio mode. So you have to disconnect and reconnect. So what I've done is gone into the main menu and changed what this does so you can use it with your digital audio workstation. So what we have to do is go into menu, we go to setup, and we go into USB. So instead of being a 2-track mix, which is this one over here, and you have to, as it says there, disconnect and change it over, we've got it down as multi-track record. To showcase this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up Logic. If it's just a 2-track mix, on the input you're going to see input 1 and input 2, and that's it. But now it's in multi-track mode, then when we click this, we've actually got 20 inputs. So the question is, where are those 20 inputs? Well, let me show you. Even though you plug in a mono system, you have outputs in stereo because you can have stereo effects. So as you can see here, we've actually got 2 different ones bouncing up and down. So for each one, if I was to put this in stereo, if we go to it here, we've got 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 5 and 6, 7 and 8, 9 and 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Then we've got the actual main master out as 17 and 18. And then you've also got the monitor mix as well as 19 and 20. They're all inputs, even though they sound like outputs, because you can record the out of that as an in your digital audio workstation. So you have all these different inputs, and then on top of that, you can actually have this as different outputs. So the outputs, we've actually got 14 different outputs, and then you've got the option, of course, with Logic to have it as surround if you need to. But you've got your stereo outputs, output 3 and 4, right up to 13, 14. So this is a 20 in, 14 out audio interface. The next option is actually for live streaming, and this is great for your digital audio workstation. So now we've got it in multi-track stream. If I go to Logic now and go to settings, audio, you have to reboot this when you do that, by the way. But if you go to this now, look at the different options you've got. You've got channel USB, the sound pads, you've got the main AUX, and you've got channel 1, AUX 2, 3, 4 as well. So you've got the USB out, and then you've got the pads, so you can record them all separately. So that's just for the output, as in to send it out. If we go to the input, then you've got a main option, you've got monitor, all the 4 channels, you've got the mobile, you've got the Bluetooth, you've got the USB, and you've got sound pads as well. So you can send whichever input you want to. So if we just pick main for now, but then we have the output. So I'm going to have this set up where we've got the main as as the input, and the output is channel USB. So therefore the output is going to here. So therefore I've got my guitar, I've got my keyboards, my microphones going into the Gigcaster. It's then going into the digital audio workstation that's also playing music as well, and then it's coming back out to here, to actually the USB channel. So now I've got this track running, and if I was to play this, it's going to come up on the USB. There it is. This is a fantastic option if you want to live stream, you want to have your inputs go into the computer, but you also want the digital audio workstation as an input as well. And then the whole thing goes out to somewhere like OBS. So just to showcase this in OBS right now, I'm recording my screen just to show you. If I go into the Gigcaster here, you can actually see there's all those different options again. We've got all these different ones. So I've just picked main. So the main output right here is feeding into OBS for the live stream. Additionally to all of that, I can still plug in either headphones and listen to it, or I could plug in speakers if I wanted to go to the main out. Now, once you've got the setup the way you want, the recorder is completely separate, but it can record in both stereo, or you can record in multi-track, whether it's pre-fade or post-fade. And if you saw the last video where we set up for a live gig, we had it recording a couple of different songs, and we've got them here. I can play them back right here, and we can show you what it looks like on a computer. So now we've shown you everything to do with live streaming. The best way to control this on a computer is with the GS8 app, the Gigcaster 8 app. And you can download this, and you do need a driver to make sure it works for either your PC or Mac. But once you've got it up and running, then you'll see this. So this is the Gigcaster app, and as you can see, it's connected right now, again, just with the USB, nothing else, and it's mirroring what's happening on the actual Gigcaster live. But we can do a couple of things. So for example, you can see here, it's got channel 1 with a little red dot. That's our little orangey red dot here, and that means we've got 48 volts phantom power. And if I was to click the channel, you can see it's in the same color coding as the top row here. So channel 1 is blue, channel 2 is this orangey color, channel 3 green, channel 4 purple, etc, etc. So if we go to channel 1, you can see we've got the input, we've got EQ, we've got effects, and we've got general. So input, again, just mirroring exactly what's here, and you can see it says it's on channel 1 as opposed to the guitar. It's showing that 48 volts phantom power is on. We have got 0 dB on the gain, and then you can change that over if you want to change it to something else. The EQ is actually this one here, and we can scroll down and see all the different preferences. I actually prefer it on the app because you've got them as dials. It just looks a little bit easier to navigate, certainly if you're doing a live stream. The effects, so right now it's on the talk effect as opposed to guitar, and then you can see all the different effects here, and you can scroll through them. You've got user patches, and you've got the presets, and then you can go in and edit each one, and we'll go into effects and edit later. Then we've got the general information for that channel, so whether we have USB aux in, on or off, USB inserts on pre-fade, USB in level, and then we've got the reverb send and the dynamic remain. And this is pretty much mirrored across. So if I move this fader now, you can see up here, this is moving up and down depending on what we're doing. And these are live. I can mute them. If I mute that, then this goes live like this, as you can see. And I'm using a different microphone now just so you can hear it. So therefore it's got muted. The other thing that I've not really talked about are these. These are the 4 different outs for headphones, and the first one is actually at the front right here, number 1. Numbers 2, 3, and 4 are in the back. I can also solo it, so I could solo it in the headphones. So if I was to move this up or down, of course these faders don't move, they're not motorized, but as soon as I move it, it will adjust accordingly. But you can technically move these up or down here, and we can change it actually on the app itself. When we move across the different channels, of course, we've got all the different ones, including Bluetooth. We've got the sound pads, the effects for the sound pads, and general as well. And to load up or change the pads, you've got a dedicated pad section here. We'll get into that in a second. You can see the main output. The main output is right here. And then we've also got the USB headphone out. We've got the main USB going out, so you guys can hear me right now. We've got the monitor out as well, so USB monitor, and then the individual ones here, the individual USB channels. So if I was to bring this up right now and bring this one up, and we can hear that there, we can hear that there. If I said I only want to hear that channel, which is channel 4, there's nothing going through right now, but if I was, then that's the only thing you'd hear. But again, I can bring these controls down and they mirror that on the app. So that is your mixer window. Before we go into the effects window, let's have a look at the pads, as I said before. So if we go into pads, you can actually see the banks and all the different things you could use that you've got loaded loaded up, you can grab a file from your computer and just load that in as long as it's a WAV. Instead of sounds, if I press effects, then of course that is this section here and what the pads do. The next one on this side is foot switch. Again, we can change it with the GAFC, or you can obviously change the controls, what they're going to do for each button. And then you've got setup. So the actual setup of the device itself, everything from the LCD brightness, I've got it right down so the camera can see it. What the switch on brightness is, so if I was actually to press a button, is it going to go really bright or not? What the channel colors are, what the MIDI channel is, and obviously what we're doing with multi-track recording. Moving over from the mixer page, we go into effects, and this is where you can actually really dial in what you need. I really like this because you can change it for a set. So you've got guitar, sing and talk for each one. So if I went into the librarian of each one, you've got the different sounds, both preset and user. And then for each one in librarian, you've got a live set. So what you can do is you can create a live set, give it a name, and then what you can do is you can start adding things in and just drag them in one by one in the order that you want them in. So if I do this now, so I've got that one there, then I want to make sure I've got this one, which is the clean one. There we go. And this is my live set for guitar. Then you can do the same for singing, or you can do the same for talking. So you'll end up with your own set list of the best ones you need, as opposed to going and trying to get them to the one you want. You can just drop them in, go next, next, next. And if you're really organized, you could be able to set this up by song. So you can just click next and the whole lot changes. If you go into editor and we actually click on one of them, then this is where we can actually edit what the sound is and how the sounds. So we can go into each individual thing with the overdrive, the amp, the noise suppressor. There's absolutely loads. So this is where you could spend a week just going into every sound and personalizing it for you. Remember, these are the sounds from the GT range, and when you get into the vocals, they're the sounds from the VE range. So you've got full access here. If I go into singing, we go into pop. Let's have a quick look. And we've got the pop sound, we've got the enhance, we've got noise suppressor, we've got pitch correct, we've got harmony, EQ, effect 1, which can be a radio, it can be a couple of other things as well, and you've got effect 2, effect 3, then you've got a reverb, and then on top of all that you've got the master, and that's for one preset, and we've got loads to play with. So the effects tab is really important, certainly for creating things like a live set, and then you send that over and write it. You can see the right at the other end there, you can write it to the memory of the Gigcaster. Now when you click on the SD card option, you'll see this, it says connected and then disconnect, and you have to give it a minute to read the SD card to figure out what's going on. So now we're in the SD card and you can see file format, sample rate and bit rate, and if we go into file and give it a click, you've got access to the whole GS8 SD card here. Now if I just expand this a little bit, you can actually see you've got two different ways of actually recording your mix. You've either got a stereo mix, which is this, and you can have got a WAV there, or you've got mix.wav. So mix.wav is if you're recording it in multi-track, and you've also got lots of different options there as well. So this last one here is the one we did from the last video. Then what we can do is we can export this out. So there's the file there, and we can actually hit export. And now it's asking you where do you want to put it. So instead of actually plugging in the SD card into your computer, maybe you need an adapter, you don't need to do that. You just keep the Gigcaster connected to your computer and the SD card's in there, and therefore you don't have to plug it in, finding things like a micro SD card adapter or anything like that. Now I'm just going to save this to my desktop, and we just have to wait for that to move it across. Okay, so we've got export complete, that's fine. And we can close that down. The last bit is the tuner, and you've got a tuner here, and it's picking up on different channels. So right now, it's launched the tuner on the Gigcaster. It's exactly the same. So let's turn channel 1 off, shall we? Because it's picking up my voice right now. And we can close that out, no problem. And then finally, we've got the menu. And this menu is actually just to do a little bit of housekeeping for the Gigcaster. So you've got time. You can back the whole thing up. So you can back up all the presets, all your live sets, and the settings you've got. You can back it up here, or you can restore it as well. You've got device settings, so obviously as it's plugged into the computer, owner's manual, and obviously the version. So the Gigcaster is an amazing piece of kit. We can mix ourselves with effects from both the GT range and the VE range from Boss. There's multiple inputs for both physical connections and wireless connections. Then you can pump that out to a PA, as well as 4 different headphone outputs. The pads at the bottom you can use for sound bites, or you can switch it over to play with the effects. And then on top of all of that, we can live stream with the USB Type-C. And finally, we can record it all multi-track or stereo, it's up to you. Now, if you have found value over the last couple of videos about the Gigcaster, then give this video a thumbs up. That really helps me and it helps the channel. And there's a link in the description if you want to go and pick one of these up. They are affiliated links. By clicking them, obviously it supports the channel, but at no extra cost to you. I just want to thank Boss for sending the Gigcaster out to me. It's an absolute dream for me when I'm gigging, and it's the easiest thing to play around with live streaming as well. Now, if you've got any specific comments about the Gigcaster, please comment underneath this video and I'll try and answer them as much as possible. But in the meantime, if you're into Boss products but you like looping, then check out this video.